Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants Hangout. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I will be your host for today. Really excited to take another virtual field trip to the Vancouver Aquarium. We're going to join Rachel Bell Irving today with Oceanwise and the Vancouver Aquarium, and we are going to be talking about sharks. So today, Rachel is going to help us dispel some myths surrounding these misunderstood creatures of the sea. We're going to learn a little bit about their diversity, why they're important to the ocean, and of course, how our choices can affect their survival around the world. So Rachel, it's so great to have you joining us today. We've already been watching some sea turtles kind of video bombing in behind you. So we're looking forward to today's event.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. I am sure there will be lots of action behind me, and I'll make sure to introduce everybody to some of these creatures. So again, yes, hello, my name is Rachel, and I am located at the Vancouver Aquarium. We're on Stanley Park inside of the downtown kind of core on the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people, which means we're right in the heart of a temperate rainforest. So we have a whole diversity of animals to explore, and that includes sharks. Sharks are what I like to call the superheroes of the ocean. They have an amazing job to do, regardless of how big and how small, but there's so little that we understand. And the best way to start dispelling those myths is to talk about it. So we're going to explore some of those really cool creatures today. Now, the first thing to get started with is I would like everybody to make a face as to how you feel when you hear the word shark. When you hear the word shark, what sort of face do you make? Awesome. I see some thumbs up. I see some gasps. I see some scary faces. And that's very true for a lot of the world's population, because the sharks that we only hear about tend to be the ones with the big teeth and the scary jaws and that are massive in the ocean. So when we hear sharks, we tend to think about things like the great white shark. I'm just going to share my screen. You're going to see Joe for a few seconds there. And this is what we tend to think about when we hear sharks. It's these, what we consider monsters, these giant tooth creatures that can be very scary for a lot of people. And sharks can be dangerous when they're big, but of the sharks that we hear in the media, we only hear about 4 species. Things like the great white shark, tiger shark, bull shark. In truth, there are over 500 different types of sharks, ranging from the giant whale shark as big as your school bus and the dwarf lantern shark, which can fit into the palm of your hand. So if you hold up your hand, the smallest shark in the world can fit into the palm of your hand, and it glows in the dark, which is a really cool shark. So they come in lots of different shapes and sizes, and they are covering the entire world. So some of the sharks that we have behind me, we've got our black tip reef sharks, which are usually about, I would say, up to 5 feet long or so, maybe even smaller, so maybe even as tall as you right now. We've got our black tip reef sharks, but also we have a couple sharks that we rarely get to see in our habitat. One is the white bamboo shark. This shark is about the length of your arm, and it hides in the corals. So it's quite a small shark, but it is there. And then we do have an epaulet shark as well, which again is quite small, only a couple even centimeters long, maybe even a couple feet, and it hides in the coral. So even in our habitat behind me, we have a wide diversity of sharks, some that like to hide and some that are tiny. And what makes sharks so memorable? I always think of the teeth. This is the thing that seems to make sharks the most famous, is their awesome teeth. But when we get a shark living in the ocean, they're kind of chill. So this shark is a 6-gill shark, and this is diving down in British Columbia waters, so cold, dark waters, and we've got a 6-gill shark. So by looking at the shark's body, we know that sharks are fish. They've got these wonderful gills, and they swim side to side. So when you see that, you know that it's a fish. So sharks are fish, just like we have goldfish or carp or any of those. And they are related as well to rays. And we do have some rays hiding behind me that might show their heads. But sharks and rays are part of the fish family, nice and cool. And so that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is people think that sharks are in their own bubble, that they are never there. I'm trying to stop sharing my screen. Where'd you go? There we go. Okay. Sorry, Joe.
You're back. No big deal.
There we go. Yeah, so sharks are fish just like rays. They are cousins of each other. And people forget that they're just fish. They're just massive fish, but they're most known for their giant teeth. I've actually got some teeth with me here. So I've got this tooth here. This is from a silky shark. There's another species of shark. It's quite a big fish. It actually is as big as my face, which is cool. And this is what has made sharks so famous, is most of these sharks have nice sharp teeth, and they've got rows and rows and rows of teeth, which means they can actually constantly replace their teeth over and over and over again. So hundreds of thousands of teeth within their lifetime. When they lose one, it's just replaced with another. This is a medium shark, I would say. But then again, sharks come in all different shapes and sizes. So our black tip reef sharks, for example, this is their jaw here. Much different. Still got that nice sharp teeth, but a little bit smaller. If you were going to encounter one of these sharks, you might lose a finger, I'll admit, but it's really going to be more scared of you than it is of anything else. So even with the thing that makes them the most famous, these sharks still come in lots of different shapes and sizes, and they have many different types of jobs to do. And you have something in common with these sharks as well. If you touch the front of your teeth, those teeth are just like a shark's tooth. They are sharp to a point, and they are designed for ripping and tearing and shredding, just like a great white shark, for example. So you are part carnivore as well, because you've got these nice sharp teeth just like a shark. But of course, this isn't the rule. Like I said, there's 500 different types of sharks in the world, and they've got lots and lots of different types of mouths. For example, this wonderful little shark here. Oh, the name suddenly escapes me. But this is a very cute shark, and it's got this kind of crunching type of mouth. So this is a bottom-dwelling shark living on the bottom of the ocean, and it actually goes after things like clams and snails, and it uses this grinding sharp teeth in order to crack open those shells. So even though many sharks have sharp teeth, they don't all eat the big fish or the seals or people, as some people believe. They actually will eat anything from snails and shrimp and lobsters to fish and seals. And some of the biggest sharks in the ocean eat the smallest things in the world. Give me a wave if you know what this shark is. There's a few waves. So this is a whale shark. It is the size of a school bus. Next time you get on a bus, take a look and imagine that you are floating beside this giant, amazing shark. And this is how it hunts, the same as the megamouth shark and the basking shark. It simply glides through the water, opening its giant mouth, trying to catch all of the plankton, the tiny little microscopic shrimp that live in the water column. It's a very relaxing shark, very fun to go diving with, but it's a shark and it doesn't eat the big scary things as well. So sharks need these amazing superpowers in order to find their food, whether they're hunting for krill or whether they're hunting for things under the sand. And to do so, they've got these pores. They kind of look like blackheads and they're speckled underneath the body, and they've got a fancy name. They're called the ampullae de Lorenzini, which is a very fun thing to name a body part. And these little pores help to catch electromagnetic senses in the water. So for example, every time your heart beats, it sends out a little electrical pulse. And that is what these pores are able to find. So thanks to this sensory mechanism, they're able to find things hidden in the sand or miles away, or sorry, not miles away, meters away. And they're able to hunt super effectively thanks to these pores. And the other superpower that they have that is different from humans, so there's your ampullae de Lorenzini, kind of that diagram of where all the pores, lots and lots of sensory mechanisms there. And then they also have this lateral line. So if you imagine that somebody drew a line from your armpit, down your hip, all the way down to your ankle, where the seam of your pants probably is, that is where the lateral line is on a shark. And it helps them detect movement in the water. So as they're swimming, even fish in their blind spot, they would be able to feel the water movements to help them detect their prey. So because of these two things, because of the lateral line and because the ampullae of Lorenzini, sharks actually have 7 senses. Humans only have 5. We have the touch, taste, smell, and sight and hearing. And on top of that, they also have the ampullae of Lorenzini and the lateral line, which does make them amazing predators, whether they're going after the big fish or whether they're going after the little crabs. Now, I did say from the start that sharks have an important job to do. So if we think about the sharks at the top of the food chain, the ones that are the most famous, like the great white shark, for example, they have an important job to do. They're hunting after things like tuna and krill, or the big fish, or the seals, and those kind of medium-sized predators. And in this way, they're helping keep balance in the ocean because they will eat the fish that are sick, they'll eat the fish that are old, and they're helping maintain a healthy population. Because also those fish eat the littler fish, and those fish eat the krill, and the krill eat the plankton. And this is a very basic food chain with the top predator playing a very pivotal role in that food web. Now, what happens is if you take away sharks, what are we gonna get? That top predator has been removed, the balance is disrupted, and there is nothing stopping those medium predators from going to town. They can overpopulate, and they will oftentimes eat out all of the other animals as well. And then we get something that's incredibly unbalanced. With all this kind of disorder happening, and entire ecosystems can fall apart because of this. And this has happened in the real world as well. For example, in the US, there was an area in the Carolinas where they hunted sharks to extinction or near extinction. And the sharks were eating the stingrays, and the stingrays were eating the scallops. So when the sharks were gone, those stingrays ate all of the scallops that they were farming, that they were using for food, that they were using for diving. And this industry where you have lots of people relying on it for jobs, lots of people relying on it for food, humans too are affected in the way that because we took out the sharks and the rays had nothing to stop them and they ate all of our food supply. So fishermen were in trouble, humans were in trouble. And there's this delicate balance that we have to maintain in the ocean because us as humans are just as much a part of that as sharks. And so when we think about sharks and their role to play, whether they're the massive big sharks or they're the little sharks that might be food for other animals, everybody has a job to do, including humans. So I encourage you to go out into your local area and find what food chain you are a part of and think about how you affect it. Right now, ocean-wise, we do a lot of research in plastics, for example, to try to see how our disposable plastics affect the ecosystem, because we're finding that plastics are getting into the ocean and that they're getting into these food chains and affecting animals at every level. So there's one thing that I know I can do as a human is I can help reduce my plastic usage so less of that is going out into the environment. There is something that everybody can do, and I encourage you to go look out into your own ecosystems to see what part you play in the natural world around you. So there's my overview of sharks and their importance too.
Perfect. That was great, Rachel. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. And it's really neat to watch your friends cruising by in the background as well, giving you a little support. So what we're going to do is we'll start visiting our classrooms. We'll start taking some questions. I can see there's a couple classrooms viewing on YouTube as well. But you can use the chat sidebar on the right if you like and let us know where you're watching from. Send us in a question or two and we'll make sure those get included. But for now, let's hang out with some of our classrooms. So let's go first. Mrs. Pearson's class. They're joining us in Calgary, Alberta. They're grade 3s and 4s. Let me turn their microphone on. Let's see how they're doing. How we doing, Calgary? All right, who's first?
Well, if the sharks are hungry, will they eat somebody?
That's a really good question. If the sharks are hungry, will they eat somebody? It is absolutely possible, but by rule of thumb, I always say anything with a mouth can bite you. So remember that no matter how big or how small, anything with a mouth can definitely bite. So we think that that's possibly why a lot of shark attacks happen, is sharks are swimming by that are hungry and that are thinking, this is a food, maybe I'll try it out. And remember, sharks don't have hands. So just like dogs, just like squirrels, just like cats, sorry, not squirrels, just like dogs and cats, they often have to use their mouth to explore the world around them because they don't have hands like we do. So sharks will explore their food source by taking a bite. And unfortunately, being humans, we're actually quite fragile and we often get hurt by these sharks trying to see if we're edible. So that definitely does happen. And the reason it happens is, one, we have entered into their habitat, and two, this might mean that there's something wrong with the shark's food supply. So there's a lot of research that's going into that as well. It can happen, absolutely. And unfortunately, we're not a very good match for something with big sharp teeth.
All right. Great question to start us off. And a great point, because you really think about it, every day and all around the world every year, millions and millions of people swim in the ocean, and there's really only a handful of incidents you hear about each year. We really aren't on the menu for sharks. It is really that case, those mistakes or that mistaken identity, I think, that happens sometimes.
Absolutely. There's no such thing as a man-eating predator. I think we really just cross paths with them when it does happen.
Yeah. All right. We're going to visit Mrs. Quinn's class, grade 4-5 students joining us in Cambridge, Ontario. Let me find her microphone. Yes, they're tricking me with a different name today. How are we doing, Mrs. Quinn's group?
How are we doing, guys? Good.
Looks like a nice warm fireplace there.
Keeping us toasty. We have a question from a friend named Aiden. What's your question, Aiden? You're blonde. There you go. What's your question?
If there's like a bunch of electricity going on land, will the sharks still sense it?
If there's activity going on land, will the shark sense it?
Electric activity, like
electric activity. No, so that's a really good question. If there's electric activity on land, could the sharks be affected by it?
Yeah, they're wondering if they could pick it up. Can they sense it?
Oftentimes, no, because there's still too much of a difference in terms of distance for that to happen. But people have explored the idea of putting electrical pulses on surfboards to see if that would deter sharks, to freak them out. So you do have to get into the water and close enough for that to happen. There's the myth that I think great white sharks can smell it a mile away. It's more like they could smell it within a swimming pool distance. So you do have to be in the water for that to have an effect.
All right, another great question. Let us see. Let's go. Mrs. Bazy's class are joining us in Bolton, Ontario, grade 5 students. Mrs. Bazy, I know you're using your iPhone today, so if you don't mind unmuting for me, the students can say hi and we'll steal a question.
Hi. So how many different illnesses and ways can sharks get extinct?
Oh, that's a cool question. I like that. How many different illnesses and ways can sharks get extinct? Very cool question. So the primary reason that sharks are killed is because of humans. Again, when we go back to thinking about shark attacks, sharks kill about 8 to 9 people per year, but humans can kill up to 9 billion sharks per year. So that's the biggest threat to sharks right now is humans, and that can be anywhere from purposefully hunting them, as well as getting caught in debris and fishing nets, or eating food that has been contaminated with plastics or poisons and toxins. So humans are the biggest threat to sharks, but there have been studies. Some sharks are privy to other things, which is interesting. So for example, the Greenland shark, which I think I may have a picture, I'll see if I do. The Greenland shark is an Arctic shark. It's one of the oldest possible sharks that we've actually been able to age, which is quite cool. I think the oldest shark might be 500 years old, which is pretty neat. And this shark has been found with a parasite on its eye, which is interesting. So this is the Greenland shark, and it lives like thousands of feet down, usually in really cold water, but they have recorded it with a parasite on its eye. We don't know what that parasite really does or why it's there, or if the shark has just let it in there and it's blind. There's a lot of studies that we still have to do. So different sharks sometimes are susceptible to different things, but humans are the biggest threat.
All right, let's meet another classroom. Let's go to Ottawa, Ontario. Mrs. Samuel's grade 6s are joining us. Let me turn their microphone on.
Go ahead, then.
Hello.
Up to the stage.
Hello.
Go ahead, then. Move up to the stage.
Couldn't sharks overpopulate because they like eat all the tuna and medium-sized fish?
Could the sharks overpopulate? They could, in theory. We haven't seen that happen, again, because they still have predators to worry about, even if they're at the top of the food chain. Even if you took out humans as a threat, sharks will eat other sharks. So they still have that sort of balancing mechanism, even within their own population.
All right, good question.
I like that thought process. It's a very good I wonder question. Very good.
So let's go to British Columbia this time. We're going to visit Mrs. Caesar's class. We've got some grade 6s there. Mrs. Caesar, you're just off my screen today. Do you mind unmuting for me? And then the students can say hi, and we'll steal a question.
There we go. Can you hear us?
We gotcha. Hey, grade 6s.
How much food do you feed the sharks each day?
How much food do we feed the sharks each day? That's a really good question. So our sharks we feed 3 times a week, and they will get a handful of things like capelin is a big one that we feed our sharks, as well as squid sometimes. Skuna, who is the green sea turtle that's chilling behind me there, she is a green sea turtle, so she's a vegetarian, which means we will feed her things like tofu and bell peppers I've been told are her favorites, which is quite cool. But she'll also get things like grasses and stuff like that.
All right, let's take a trip to Aurelia. This time we're going to visit Mr. Cornelius and Mr. Burney have some students, some grade 4s in Aurelia. If you guys want to turn your mic on for me and say hi, we'll steal a question.
Hello. What are some ways that sharks help the environment in the ocean?
Oh, what are some ways that sharks help the environment in the ocean? So that's a really good question. It depends on the shark you're looking at. Again, when we talk about those top predators, balance keepers is their primary job. So that's really helpful for humans to make sure that every population is healthy below them. But if you look at smaller sharks, for example, then their job could be balance keepers, or they might be food for other animals. So every animal has a job to play in the food chain, particularly when it comes to fish. Fish have lots of different roles. They eat lots of different things. My personal favorite is this one. This is a sawfish. It's quite cool. So that's at the front of their face. And they're going after smaller fish compared to the great white sharks that might be going after sea lions. But still an important job to do because they're going to help keep those smaller populations in check as well. And they eat the sick and injured fish, which is really important.
Okay, let's jump to our last classroom we haven't introduced yet. Let's go to Nipeen here in Canada, so just outside of Ottawa. We've got some grade 4 students with Mrs. Damianakos, and let's get their microphone on. How are we doing, grade 4s?
Hi.
All right, who's got the question for us?
What's the biggest shark you have in the aquarium?
Thank you. The biggest shark that we have in our aquarium is the black-tip reef sharks. So I think actually if you were to stand up, our black-tip reef shark's about as tall as you are. Yeah, they're about as tall as you, not including the unicorn horn, but they're quite there. So there's one swimming by. These ones are a bit smaller. They're only about 3.5 feet tall. Those are the biggest ones.
All right. Well, we have time. We're going to start visiting our classrooms again. We'll see if we have some follow-up questions. So let's see. Let's swing back and let's start. Let's mix it up a little. Let's start with Mrs. Samuel's class this time if you guys have a follow-up question.
She's coming. Hang on.
That's okay.
Okay, guys.
Since we can't see air, can fish see water?
Ooh, that's the philosophical question. If we can't see air, can sharks see water? I don't know the answer to that, to be perfectly honest. I know they can feel it, and I think that's probably more important so they can find their way around. But I'm not totally sure. A lot of ecosystems, there's no light, so you wouldn't be able to see regardless. And many sharks that live down in the abyssal zone, so where there's absolutely no light, many of those sharks are blind because they don't need to see anymore. So very cool question. I don't have an answer to that, but I'm going to go explore that afterwards because now I'm curious. I don't know if that's been studied yet.
All right, that's definitely a mission for the classrooms too, a little bit of homework if you want to look online and see if anybody's ever explored that before. And my guess would be maybe, because water is so much more denser than air. So I would think that maybe, but who knows? I guess the best way is to do a little research. Let's see. Let's go to Mrs. Quinn's class this time. Your microphone is on again.
Why do they throw the sharks back in when they make shark fins too?
That's a really good question. Why do they throw the sharks back after they've removed the fins? I personally don't know the answer, but my best guess would be because that would take up too much space on the boat. And I think that's a big issue with a lot of fishing is if you are going to fish, it's best to make sure that you do take the whole animal and that you're using the whole animal to A, be respectful to nature, and B, making sure that you're not wasting anything. So it is a very wasteful industry, shark finning for sure. And my guess is they don't keep the bodies because there's no space on their boats for it.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. The fins are worth a lot of money. The shark meat itself isn't worth very much money, so they can store way more on board if they just take those fins and unfortunately dispose of the rest of the shark. So it isn't a really great trade, but the good news, I guess, is it's being banned in a lot more places. So hopefully.
And the more we talk about it and the more that we help governments apply policy to change it, then we'll see more change. Because shark fins, if you wiggle your ears and you wiggle your nose, that's cartilage, and that's what shark fins are made out of. So there's no taste to them. They're just this thing.
All right, so let's turn on Mrs. Pearson's microphone in Calgary. You're ready to go.
How big is a megalodon's jaws?
How big is a megalodon's jaws? That's a really good question. So megalodon, for those if anyone doesn't know, is a prehistoric shark that we believe might have been the predecessor to a lot of sharks today. So for example, it possibly, we don't know for sure, but it could be the great grandfather of the great white shark, for example. So that's the possibility. But the shark itself, we believe, because we've been able to find the teeth themselves can be about bigger than 7 inches, so they can be quite large themselves. So if you actually completed the full jaw, I believe it's around, I know it's taller than me, so I would guesstimate 8 to 10 feet, in height. So a massive, massive thing. You can have a person or two standing inside of their jaw.
All right, and I think it's important too that we don't buy too much into those shows where they think a megalodon might still exist. I think we know pretty for certain that they're extinct, but there's always those funny shows like those megalodon hunters and stuff that you see on TV. So don't fall for the tricks.
And I can tell you why they think megalodons have gone extinct. And the reason they believe it was because megalodon, from the teeth, they assume it was a meat eater, and likely it was hunting blue whales, which is why blue whales might be so big, because they were trying to outgrow the megalodon. But eventually, the megalodons got so big that they weren't able to sustain themselves on the meat diet alone. So they believe, one of the theories is that they actually starved to extinction. So we really don't believe it's around, and it's an ancestral version of common sharks is more likely.
All right, and we just had a ray make an appearance behind you. Now the rays, they're related to sharks, right?
They are, yes. If you can consider them sort of like the cousins of the sharks. So they do have the same cartilage skeletons. They do have gills. They do have similar jaws, but their teeth have been sort of filed down. These are actually the ray teeth, the tropical ray, and they're kind of flat. So they're mostly hunting for things on the bottom of the ocean, like shells and crayfish. And so sharks, rays, and skates are all part of the same family.
All right, Mr. Bernie and Aurelia, if you want to turn your microphone on for us, we'll steal another question from the grade 4s.
Why are some species of sharks on the endangered list, and how can we help to change that?
Why are some sharks on the endangered list, and how can we help to change that? That's a really great question. So predominantly they're on the endangered list because of human interaction. So again, it comes down to the either hunting the sharks, or it's because of the debris that they get entangled in, or also because we are taking their food supply. So this is another big issue that we're facing right now, is overfishing and unsustainable fishing, which means that we are either taking too much fish, or we're damaging the habitats when we take fish. And these really unsustainable practices take the food away from animals that need it, like sharks. So those are, and as well as boat traffic and things like that. So humans are predominantly the reason why sharks are going extinct. And I think the best ways to help it is to keep talking about it. And as well as we need government to be involved. And this is a big challenge because the ocean is a little confusing. The borders of the ocean are not clear, and we're not sure who takes responsibility for it. So really pushing for things like marine protected areas and proper fishing regulations and things like that. That's what's most important to help protect the sharks. In the meantime, though, choosing sustainable seafood is a really good option. So if you're in Canada and you see our Oceanwise symbol beside anything that's in a grocery store or in a restaurant, that means that fish has been caught in a sustainable way. And the more that we choose these good fish, the more we're telling restaurants and businesses that this is what we want. And then hopefully more restaurants will choose to do that as well.
All right, excellent points and great advice and things that students can do at home and to make those little differences. And I really love the point you brought up earlier. It's just telling other people. There's so many people who don't know what's happening. And the more you tell people what you learned today, the more they're going to tell other people. And that's how change happens, is people making those decisions. So Mrs. Damianakos, your microphone is on if you guys want to go ahead with another question.
Okay, so it's the two-parter. Rara, do you want to start?
What does a hammerhead shark eat? And how big is it? And how much does it weigh?
Okay, so what does a hammerhead shark eat and how big are they?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So this is a cool thing about all fish, and you can be scientists as well with these kind of skills. Whenever you find a new animal or an animal that you're not sure about, take a look at where the mouth is, because where the mouth is can give us a hint as to what it eats. So for example, hammerhead sharks, when they are on the bottom of the head, we know that they're probably eating something below the body. So they're probably looking for things in the sand, and that's the case with hammerhead sharks. Their mouth is underneath their body, and they like to look for things in the sand, either usually things like hermit crabs and snails and maybe even little fish, anything that they can catch. And that's why they've got that really wide head so that they can find things underneath. In terms of their size, there's two different types of hammerheads that I know of, but generally they can be as big as 14 feet, and they can get up to 150 kilograms around there, so 330 several pounds. So they can be quite big, which is cool.
All right, I have had the pleasure of diving with hammerheads in Bimini in the Bahamas, the great hammerhead. And we spent 6 hours on the bottom of the ocean with them over 2 days. And they were 10, 12 feet long. They were just amazing sharks. And I heard a story, one of the divers told me about a hammerhead they saw there that had 14 little sting barbs from stingrays in its face, because when it goes for the stingray fights back. And so this shark had all the little sting barbs in its face from the rays that it was catching.
That's amazing.
All right, Mrs. Basie, do you want to turn the microphone on for me? And we'll grab another question.
Have you ever gone swimming in the swimming with the sharks?
I have not gone swimming with the sharks. The only time that I've been with sharks was I did go diving in Cuba for some research projects, and that was quite cool. Did not see any sharks, but I was told that one swim was swimming out in the open ocean that didn't come any closer to us, which I'm okay with. But no, we do have trained divers that go into these habitats, and their job usually is cleaning, because that's a big job when you're a diver in an aquarium, is we need people to do a lot of cleaning. So if you like scuba diving and you like getting scrubbing, this is a very good job.
All right, back to British Columbia one more time. Mrs. Caesar, if you don't mind turning on the microphone for me, we'll steal a question.
Oh, did that work?
Yeah, no, we got you. I can hear you.
Okay. Okay.
What's the average age a shark dies at?
Ooh, the average age that a shark can die at. That's a really good question. I don't know if that's been studied. Let me do a quick Google search. To be honest, sharks are difficult to study, and there's a lot that we still don't know because out in the open ocean, it takes a lot to track them, and it depends on the species. So when you're looking at the sharks that are actively hunted, those ones are going to go a lot younger, most likely because they're the ones that are caught first. And then the smaller sharks might be eaten. So for them to live even up to 20 years old is pretty good. The average age of sharks, I think, generally speaking, on a rule of thumb for most fish, it's like 20 to 30 years or so when you look at it. But the oldest shark that we think might exist is the Greenland shark was dated to be about 500 years old. So if things are left in the perfect conditions, they could potentially live to be hundreds and hundreds of years old, which is cool. But you're looking at anywhere from 20, maybe 50 years at the most.
Yeah, that's a tough question because there's so many different species. They have different lifestyles. And from what I've read too is a lot of the ways that you can tell the age of a shark is after it's already passed on. So it is hard to find to tell their age, but it's a really cool question.
It's the same challenge we face with our sea turtle. So Skuna, who you've seen swimming around, is a rescued and non-releasable sea turtle. She was rescued from up in Haida Gwaii, which is the northern part of BC, where it's way too cold for a green sea turtle. But in order for us to age her properly, we would have to take off the shell, and we can't do that while she's still alive. So we're just gonna say she's probably late 20s, maybe early 30s, and we will find out whenever she does pass away how old she was.
All right. Well, classrooms, I think we visited every classroom twice. Give me a huge wave if we haven't visited your class twice, but I'm pretty sure we've been to every classroom twice. But thank you so much, classrooms. Your questions, as always, are awesome. And Rachel, obviously a huge thank you to Oceanwise and the Vancouver Aquarium, and of course yourself for hanging out with us today, and your special guests, and for sharing all that great information with us. You know, it's so important for students to know that there are a lot of myths out there about sharks. If you take a little time to get to know them, you're going to find out they're pretty amazing creatures, and they're pretty darn important.
Yeah, I like to say if you've read something, go and find a completely different source for it, because there are a lot of people out there that might stretch the truth or might be looking at it from a particular perspective. So it's always good to have a little bit of skepticism when you read things online.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much. We look forward to our next adventure at the Vancouver Aquarium. What I'll do now to finish things off is turn all the microphones on, let the classrooms get nice and loud. And of course, just a quick reminder, classrooms, post some pictures on Twitter. We love to see classrooms in action. And I shared links with all the teachers for the aquarium and Oceanwise, so they can see those pictures as well. So again, thanks so much, everybody. Here come the microphones. All right, great job. On classroom for that at the end. So thanks so much, everybody. Rachel, enjoy the rest of your day, and look forward to the next connection.
All right, bye, everybody.